it's the more you practice harnessing the one thing that you know you have, to say, how do I then capture your attention in less than 5 minutes?
Yes.
So when we market, we use our voices. When we communicate, we use our voices. When you do radio, you use your voice. And for me, my voice is my gem. But here's the thing, when I talk to entrepreneurs, is that don't separate who you are from your company.
Mm-hmm.
Because your DNA is going to be a part of your brand. Mm-hmm. But then when you go through life and you start focusing on your own personal brand, you realize that the classroom lessons don't really apply anymore. There's things that you have to do as an individual. I'm happy that your podcast is Mindset Profits Podcast. Because
preach it, sister. Welcome to another edition of Mindset Profits. We are super excited to be bringing this one to you. Today we're talking personal branding, what it is, how you get started, mistakes that people are making, because whether you like it or not, you do have a personal brand. I'm sitting with a specialist in communication, a specialist in personal branding, a specialist in corporate training, a philanthropist, a specialist in radio, a specialist in many things. The amazing Doric Sithole, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction. And like I said before when we were chatting, that when someone calls you a specialist, it comes with a bit of pressure, So I'm thinking, okay, I have to live up to all those names. But I think the one thing that is there in all those introductions is the usage of my voice.
Yes.
So when we market, we use our voices. When we communicate, we use our voices. When you do radio, you use your voice. And for me, my voice is my gem.
Wow. Actually, when I invited you for this platform after the introduction, I was calling just to understand what we'll talk about. But you had me in 1 minute. I was sold. How do you do that? How do you make such a strong impression in a very short time? Do you have that same effect on other people? Or I just caught you in a good day?
Maybe I won the lotto on the day. Can't be too sure. But it's a skill I've had to refine over the years. And one of the things that we're going to be chatting about today is being intentional. Most of us went to school, we learned some things, but then when you go through life and you start focusing on your own personal brand, you realize that the classroom lessons don't really apply anymore. There's things that you have to do as an individual. I'm happy that your podcast is Mindset Profits Podcast, because there's a lot of work you have to put in as an individual. Your mindset also determines where you end up, and where you go is your GPS. And so with me, it was a lot of refinement, harnessing my skills and getting to a place of really saying, how do I show up? How am I going to show up? And
so this is a skill that someone can learn, making an impression in a short time.
Yes. And those are the things that I train people on. How do you introduce yourself in less than 30 seconds?
This is going to be interesting.
How do you introduce yourself in less than 30 seconds? And we all go to these events and we're all excited. And then you turn around and then someone says, chat to the person sitting next to you. All of a sudden, you have that cartoon sound that goes, boom, boom, boom. Because your heart is throbbing, you're thinking, I don't feel like talking to this person. This person didn't even look friendly when I walked in, or this person looks a bit uptight. The impressions we have about people when people walk into the room, this person just looks like they're not in the mood to talk to you. But here's the thing. Everything that has to do with communication speaks about boldness. You have to open your mouth and say something. But what bothers us the most is we don't know what to say. So you're at an event, nobody cares about your job description. It's a social event. I do a lot of women empowerment events, and what are the chances that you're going to say, oh, I'm in marketing, I'm a manager, I have a team of people that... Nobody does that. Nobody wants to talk about those things. So you get very nervous because you're thinking, where do I even start? Do I tell this person that I'm a wife, I have 5 kids? Maybe start there, and come up with an icebreaker. It's nerve-wracking. So with me, it's just always about understanding how to show up, but also harnessing the skills, to say, how do I really put Doric out there? because Doric is the brand. Doric is the brand. So what do I want people to see when I show up? And do people see what I want them to see, or they see the opposite? You know, I always laugh when people say, I'm confident. I'm very confident. And then when they get the feedback, someone says, you're not friendly. You seem like you're in this box. And someone gets very angry. It's you realizing that maybe when I show up, how I'm feeling on the outside does not translate out to the world. So now you have to get feedback and get an understanding about, you know, guys, what do you see when I show up in a room? And you'll be surprised the feedback that you'll get. And that feedback then allows you to go back to the drawing board and say, how do I work on myself? How do I work on myself?
What a beautiful intro to personal branding. I'm curious though, what got you started? What got you into this? What was that defining moment for you to get so interested in this topic, in this field of communication and personal branding?
Well, I always say it's you can't be going to the world and saying to people, you must be this. You must experience it first. So I had to go through the process as an individual, and 2020 for me was the year where purpose kicked in.
Yes.
I started to feel this inclination to do other things outside of my work that would excite me. So when we talk about purpose, we talk about, I think I've seen a lot of content on what's your why?
Yeah.
Do you know your why? And, right, that content is out there, but a lot of people don't understand what that means, right? So asking yourself the question, who am I? Who am I outside of my job? Were questions I started to ask myself. When you take away my position as a group marketing manager, when you take away and strip that away from Doric, who are you? And a lot of people in 2020 had that experience because we were now at home. We were not at work, keeping ourselves busy in the boardrooms, sending reports, feeling like we are functioning properly. The whole COVID scenario, in as much as it brought pain, I feel like it also brought a change in a lot of people on the inside.
It did.
We turned the mirror around and stopped focusing on our bosses and our colleagues at work, and we were forced to look at ourselves, and a lot of us didn't like what we were seeing. We had to ask ourselves, is this me? How do I even show up outside of my job description? People felt empty because we've been holding on to job descriptions as a form of identity.
And now that's not there.
Now it's taken away. So who are you outside of your work? How can you really go out there and say, I am Doric, I am passionate about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the part that actually brings my identity together. If you're talking about me, you must list the following things. So I started asking myself that. I'd been exposed to a lot of things. There was a very significant event that happened at work also, just before 2020, and a gentleman called Hector Motivator, the yellow man, asked me a question, and I was facilitating a conversation for the first time. I'd never done it. And when he was done, he came to me and he said, what are you doing with your voice? And I was thinking, what does he mean? What am I doing with my voice? I said, what do you mean? He said, no, what are you doing with your voice? Because for the first time ever, I sat and I listened when you were talking. And I said to him, well, I'm a marketing man. That thing I was telling you about, how we quickly run to our job descriptions. Yeah. I'm a marketing manager. I do this, on the usual basis, PR, radio. And he said, I get that part, but what are you doing with your voice? So people would come and say, you have a beautiful voice, you have a radio voice. And I'd say, thank you. And it ends there. But that question for me was a question that created a nudge on the inside of me. I went home, I was pondering on this question. I was like, what does he mean? What am I doing with my voice? And it left a seed.
Okay.
Because that question is the question that got me to the point in 2020 when I started feeling like I want to do more. I started my platform, Diamond Women Africa. And I literally went online, started having conversations with women about how we could empower one another. The one thing that I've always known is I'm passionate about the African continent. I love the other continents, but my identity is in the African continent. And I feel like we must also drive our own identity to the best of our abilities. Because when our children grow up, we always talk about scholarships and fellowships. People will say, I want to go to America. I had an opportunity to go to the US because of a fellowship. But when I came back, I still felt like I want to start a fellowship where young people will tour the African continent, because we're not exposing our own people to the beautiful countries that we have. So everybody who leaves South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia wants to go to the UK. They want to go to America. How many people say, I actually want to go and work in Ghana?
Actually, that wouldn't have made sense if you had said it a couple of years ago, except I've been traveling a bit to a few African countries.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. Africa is such a beautiful continent to tour.
But you've been exposed to it, so now it makes sense now.
It makes
but
sense now.
But if I'd said it to you before
I
that,
would
you would
have
have said, what do you mean? No ways. Zambia for what? You know, so we don't celebrate our continent as much as I think we should. And exposure is such a powerful tool. So that day when Hector said to me...
He said this statement to you.
I had been exposed to facilitating a conversation even though I was not expecting it. And that exposure took something on the inside of me that I didn't even know I had. That's how powerful exposure is. When you get exposed, there's something that comes out. Whether it's a trigger that leads you to a place of purpose, you are inspired, something is planted on the inside of you and it's going to nudge you for some time until you actually say, why am I bothered? I went to this event. And, you know, there are always people who like to say, oh, no, motivational speakers. Motivational speakers get you going at an event. Yes, I can do it. I can go and buy a house for R1,000,000. And then you wake up in the morning, that sound comes back again. You're back to the same spot. Because you were relying on the person who spoke to you to carry you into the process. And yet, life is much bigger than that.
And tomorrow that person is not there. It's back to you now.
No. So in 2020, that was a shift for me. And I decided to branch into something I'd never done before. Left the corporate space. And I said to myself, what can I do with my voice? Now that question now is coming back. What do I do with my voice? I joined a platform with women that were advocating for women empowerment, especially financially, economically, and I became a spokesperson for them. And because of that opportunity, I was doing interviews on radio and TV. So like I said, I'd been doing this work for years. But now it's different. I felt like I am carrying my own story now. I get to do this the best way I can do it, and I'm actually aware of what I'm doing. I'm intentional. Whereas when you're doing it for work, I'm here to represent this organization. I'm here to talk about 1, 2, 3. This is going to be on radio. You're done. But this whole process had my DNA in it because I am passionate about women empowerment.
Yeah.
So I'm aligning myself with a women empowerment platform, and now I'm speaking on their behalf. So I've taken my gift and my skill, and I've brought it into a space that is aligned with my identity and who I am.
You know what I'm thinking as you're speaking? If I had met you 2 years ago, this podcast would be somewhere.
Something
I would have
different.
started way earlier. Like way. I had the idea to start this podcast, I think 2-3 years ago. Bought the equipment and everything, but
You just
couldn't move until someone gave me something similar to what you're saying.
Yeah.
That if you build the platform, what it's going to do in terms of developing a skill that makes you relevant in the marketplace and being willing to do it imperfectly, and you get good just like talking and walking. You start off not good. So that made sense to me, and I thought, let me go for it.
Yeah.
But when you're saying it in this way, to say it aligned so much with your purpose, with what you're good at, with things that you loved doing. I love Africa.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about financial literacy for Africa. I'm passionate about African entrepreneurs just doing better.
Yeah.
So it aligns so much.
Yeah.
That's why I enjoy doing it.
The key thing there is you being in motion. You being in motion. And motion does something. You had to act. You had to start, you know. And I'm not going to align with a particular brand, but there's a particular brand where the tagline is just do it. Right? It's when you act and you are in motion, something happens. So the thing that affects us the most is I always knew that my voice was different. People told me all the time. But the moment I decided to act on what had been said, and acting knowingly so, things changed. So alignment only comes when, one, you must know. You must know. Number two, act on what you now know. Don't just know. Like I was just saying, oh, thank you. You've got a good voice. Oh, thank you. For years. And let me shock you.
Yeah.
My company is called Blue Diamond Communications. The women's platform I run for my philanthropy work is called Diamond Women Africa. I started Blue Diamond Communications in 2015. When did I say I started moving? 2020? How many years after is
5 years.
Exactly.
You are me.
So 3 years. You're better. I spent 5 years. I was going towards a decade of sitting with a brand that had a full explanation of why it is called Blue Diamond. So I wrote this letter to my senior pastor telling her that I wanted to start something, and, you know, God gave me this concept, and the concept is called unearthing the diamond within, because all of us have a gem on the inside of us that needs to find expression in the world, and once it does, we begin to serve, because the diamond shines only through pressure. As it moves, it is in what? Motion. As it moves, it's in motion. And as it begins to shine, the rays of the light of the diamond begin to touch lives. I wrote that email in 2015.
You had such a powerful vision back then.
But I didn't move
In
on
5
it.
years, you're not moving.
I wrote the email, and when I didn't get someone who was a cheerleader, I just went back into my hole, and I kept the concept. But 2020, when purpose kicked in, guess what? Now I can articulate how the diamond functions in terms of who I am. I'm a coach. I help you refine your gem. I am a miner. I'm a miner of human gems, because I help you unearth the gem on the inside of you. So I can tell my story with confidence, because then with the excitement in 2020, I went back to that email, and I literally started to spend time reading what I'd written. So don't be worried about the time you spend not doing anything, because maybe sometimes it's preparation. You needed to prepare.
Yeah.
So I always say to people, don't blame yourself. Maybe the 5 years, think about it this way. I've sent the email, and I'm excited. This is, if someone had thrown me in there with that concept, I don't know who I am. I haven't really actually bought into the fact that I have a good voice. It probably would have been a disaster.
True.
So sometimes knowing isn't a sign for you to just move. That's why the key word in everything I do, when I train people, when I coach, is the first word I'll say to someone is, you can forget everything I've taught you, but don't forget to be intentional.
There's the intentional. And when I'm looking at your journey and I'm processing it, thinking of what stopped me for the 2 years when I had the equipment and I was just not recording. And you say it so well that it was probably prep time, because for me it was. In the 2 years, I got into radio while I was still waiting. I got into radio, got exposed to radio and how interviews work in general. So that 1 year did a whole lot of development. And in that 1 year, I got to meet another friend, two actually, who are influencers, pushed me back into social media and to not get scared of YouTube. And I got started because, the 2 years worked in that way.
Yeah.
So I think it's to say to someone, if they had an idea and they've been parking it, it's not all hope is lost, and just be kind to yourself to understand. Sometimes you may not have been ready.
And it's also about the process. Like I said, there's never ever get to a point where you feel like you've wasted so much time, because when you spend time delving on that, then you can't move either, because you're living a life of regret. So I even joked about it when I created my Diamond Women Africa platform. I went online in 2020, Facebook. I even did this video clip where I was introducing myself, and I said, ladies, I spent 5 years marinating on an idea. I was laughing at myself, but I was literally adding humor to the fact that you are sitting on a diamond for 5 years. And I was teaching women to be authentic. Authenticity just means you are being yourself. You are acknowledging the pros and the cons of your personality, right? Your negatives and your positives, your strengths and your weaknesses. You are acknowledging that this thing exists, right? So when we are talking about a brand is a product or a service that has something, an identity that is recognizable, something that stands out. So if I now have to bring it to you as a human being, and I ask you today, what is the one thing about you that stands out? When you walk into a room, people will remember you for it. What is it?
Is this now the definition of personal branding?
Yes. Because now we start with just the brand. Let's look
There's
at
the
brand.
There's the personal.
There's the brand, right? The overall definition of a brand. So especially for the people that do marketing, they'll tell you that a brand is, look, an organization that has a distinguishable identity that makes them recognizable in the market.
Okay.
Right? Sometimes the other word that's used is unique identity.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you start calling yourself a brand, you're not just calling yourself a brand because you heard Doric saying there's a brand, right? Personal, you're not referring to yourself. This is you taking the decision to say, as an individual, how do I make myself stand out using something that is unique and recognizable to the market that I serve, whether it's society, whether it's in business, or whether it's in your career. But there's keywords there. Unique. 2, recognizable. 3, serving.
Unique, recognizable, serving.
But also there's the identity part. So I mention these things because I find people take it in easier. The word identity has been used so many times. Like we could sit in class and debate about it. Like, how do we define identity? I am who I am, right? And then it's like everybody's confused. But we've used this word so many times. So because I'm a trainer also, I like to break things down in a way that people will remember. So if I tell you that as a brand, as an individual, you must begin to identify who you are, your identity. Who are you?
Yeah.
Right? Number 2, what do you have that is unique, that is something that stands out? Remember when I started the introduction, I said...
So this framework, as you're building, is this me knowing the 3?
Yeah.
Is it how I communicate?
So I'll break it down as we go. Right? So let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
All right? So we defined what a brand is. Right? But now I'm breaking it down to the person, the individual.
Yes.
Who are you? Identity. Number 2, what do you have that is unique? Remember I said the brand has something unique, right, that stands out to the marketplace.
Yeah.
What do you have that is unique, that is recognizable to the market that you serve?
Oh.
So I spoke about my voice.
Yeah.
Right. So people would say, when you take the microphone, even when people are talking in a room, people keep quiet. So when I heard that, instead of saying thank you, I became intentional. Because when you now know, you become more powerful as a brand, because there are brands that are aware that people wear our shoes, and every time they give us feedback, they say, your shoes are so comfortable. I could walk a mile with your shoe. Right? And besides the comfort, the color stands out. So when people give you feedback, you take those things and you begin to mold your brand using what has been said and what you already know, so that you stand out and are unique. You can't stand out if you don't know. That's why I spent years saying thank you to people about my voice, and that voice was kept in the bottle because I did nothing about it. But when you now know, you're now intentional. So there's an energy that comes with knowing, by the way.
Okay.
There's an energy that comes with knowing. So it builds your confidence when you now know that I have a voice that stands out. So when I walk into a room and I'm emceeing and I say, good evening.
I feel it now.
Right? But I know that when I speak, there's something about my voice that captures people's attention. Now I'm applying it. So when I train, I'll teach people, practice saying good morning. Because we just walk in, morning! What do you mean? What are you doing? Right? Because we don't care. And it's not a bad thing, but we don't know that the moment you open your mouth to speak, you've just said something about who you are. You've just communicated. You've just said to me, don't take me seriously because of how you walked into the room and spoke. You've just said, don't take me seriously. You can look at everybody else in the room. Don't worry about me. Imagine that.
Yikes, from good morning.
Good morning. My name is Doric. I'm in the business of mining human gems. And people will say, but Doric, your voice is deep. I don't have a deep voice. It's not even about that anymore. It's the more you practice harnessing the one thing that you know you have and saying, how do I capture people's attention? You use it effectively so because now you know. And then you start bringing in other things to refine the gift. To say, how do I then capture your attention in less than 5 minutes? Yes, I have the voice. By the way, having the voice doesn't mean...
Now I'm understanding what you did to me.
You're saying it like you were hypnotized, like I did something to you for 5 minutes.
Goodness.
And they'll say, but how did you do that? It's a skill, and it comes with the gift. But because I knew exactly what I wanted to say to you before you called.
Okay.
What
do you call that? Intention, preparation?
Intentionality. So I've been preparing all my years to introduce myself, which is the work that you have to put in when it comes to your brand.
So that's powerful.
So
preparing all your years.
For years, you don't stop
introduce
preparing.
Yourself.
Yes.
So which means you just get ready to introduce yourself in any platform,
I don't
any
take
context.
Introductions lightly because by greeting you and saying what I said to you in a minute, I could be signing a deal for R1 million. Right? We've lost out on deals because we took it lightly. So I have a masterclass called Communicate Like a Boss for entrepreneurs and Communicate Like a Boss for individuals, right, for people in their careers. And I focused on entrepreneurs specifically because I realized that a lot of these guys have amazing products. You just don't know how to sell it to an investor.
And that's a lot of people.
I know a lot of people with amazing ideas. You engage with this person, get to their level of understanding what they do, and then you realize, what? This is what you have. But because no one has assisted them, which is where we come in, right? Being a coach means we get to help people who are saying, I would like to acknowledge the fact that speaking is not my thing. But you cannot be an entrepreneur and be fearful of sales. I hated sales, by the way. It's always shocking to a lot of people that I'm in marketing and I say, I hated
me now.
It's shocking to you. All right. I hated sales. When I was a student, I did call center work. Always on the phone. And in that moment, someone will insult you for calling them. Right? Why are you bothering me during the day? Why are you calling me? I don't want your stuff. You still have to pause and prepare yourself for the next phone call and maintain consistency in your voice. There's a lady who once insulted me and said, you are the reason why our husbands are getting into debt, getting credit cards. And then they go off looking for women. And so I remember that day I was so traumatized. I didn't even know what to say. But here are the lessons I learned by being at a call center. I didn't like the emotional part of selling because it felt like my whole life depended on it. If I don't sell, I don't make money. If I don't make money, I don't eat.
That's some seriously good context.
Right? So when you are in business, you realize that if I am not the one to tell you about my product, who's going to do that? If I can't articulate it for you, who's going to do it on my behalf? So you must be able to articulate, it's your brand, it's your company. So there's the personal brand, then there's the brand for entrepreneurs. You're running a company. But here's the thing, when I talk to entrepreneurs is that don't separate who you are from your company. Because your DNA is going to be a part of your brand. So that helps you build your values as an entrepreneur. You say, as a brand, so I'll give you an example. My company is called Blue Diamond Communications, right?
Yeah.
The top thing there is we help people communicate and articulate who they are with excellence so they can thrive and shine. So I've aligned the traits of a diamond with what I do so that everything is in sync. There's a synergy there. But I had to think through it to say, if I'm saying I'm about diamonds, what do you know? I read and did research on diamonds like I was in the mining business. I went into, I'm like, I even know terms like brittling. You know, my friends were laughing, like, you even have categories of what happens to a diamond. I said, that's how deep I had to go. That's the kind of work I had to put in to be able to understand that if I'm saying I'm helping you unearth the diamond within, what is the process of unearthing a diamond? What does a diamond go through before it shines?
Do you know what that communicates to me, though?
What does it communicate?
How seriously you take yourself and your work. Because when you say that's how deep I had to go to be able to articulate myself in a context of communication, you went deep researching a diamond because that's what the theme was about.
Yes.
What message should that be to an entrepreneur in terms of just taking themselves that seriously and getting to understand their industry, their product at that level, with that level of depth?
You don't do surface level things. You will rip nothing out of surface level. So to a point where even in conversation, people will say, you're so deep. It's because it is now ingrained in me that when I talk to you, I want to know more about you. I don't do surface level. So you will come and say, oh, this is, then I'll start asking you questions that make you feel like, hey, why are we going so deep now? Right? It's because life should be like that. When you tell yourself there must be depth in everything I do, it means that you'll never take anything lightly. It means feedback from a customer. You'll never take it lightly. Because now you're going to go back and say, why did this customer give us this type of feedback? What happened? You go backwards, and you get to a point of saying, hey, maybe let's change the way we introduce the podcast. You know, people don't like this introduction because you're deep.
I like that.
You're deep. You don't take things lightly. So if you have to put in the work, and here's the shock with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs will take their business seriously. They'll tell you, I have these products, but they forget about themselves, that you are part and parcel of the brand. Because remember, you're the custodian of the brand. So when I think Mindset Profits podcast, why do we have your face on the banner?
But intend the attention.
Yes, there's the attention part, but your face is on the banner because you're the custodian. When I think Mindset I must think Ntando. Because if you didn't want to be the face, your face wouldn't be there.
True.
So your face makes the brand recognizable. Remember those keywords we spoke about when we started? Your face makes the brand recognizable. That's why you must carry yourself the way you want to be addressed. You dress the way you want to be addressed. So I worry about how I'm going to look. So I had 5 looks this morning, and then this one thing I wanted to wear, I realized, oh, there's a stain that's not coming off. But when I slept, I thought I was going to rock the suit, right? But I always think ahead, and I'm asking myself, I've seen your podcast. I've seen your interviews. How do I want to show up? Normally, people will call you and say, Ntando, how must I dress up for this thing?
I've had those calls, believe me.
But because I'm talking about personal branding, I have to show up the best way I want to show up. Because then if I ask you and then you say, Doric, I'm going to be wearing a sweater, then now I have to think. Now I have to chill like Ntando. But I don't want to chill. I want to show up as Doric the brand. Doric the brand looks a certain type of way. So I must never be afraid to show up the way I want to show up. Unless it's a strict, I mean, we've been to places where we're told, dress down a bit, you know. But in this instance, you didn't ask me. So I was thinking about those things.
I actually allow people to be themselves.
Right. Because why? Because your brand for your podcast has those traits.
Yeah.
The making of the podcast includes certain values and principles, right? which forms the identity of the podcast. The
You're
identity which
giving me
becomes the
lines
brand.
to articulate next time. See, I'm going to be telling people about the podcast.
You have your own traits. You have your own traits. So if you don't identify what those traits are, guess what you're going to be? You're going to be all over the place. And when people think about your podcast, like, yeah, there's this guy who does this podcast. Yeah, it looks like
that,
it looks like so and so's podcast. Have you heard those statements?
Yeah.
It looks like so and so's podcast. Ouch. But so talking about names, we were chatting about my name before we started, right? And people always say, your name is different. So I always laugh because my parents weren't really intentional when they gave me the name. It's not like they knew what it means. But when I started doing my research, I'm so grateful that it was not something negative when I discovered what it meant. So it's a Greek name that means column. So talking about going deep, I'm doing my research now on my name. Doric is a Greek column, one of the strongest structures ever created by the Greeks. To this day, a Doric column will be standing when a building falls over. The columns are the only ones that are found standing. You can do that research. When you search for Doric column, even if the building has fallen apart, the temples that were built, the columns, you will count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're still standing.
Did you go back and say thanks to your parents?
I said, thank you. It wouldn't have been a thank you if it was something else. But it's that whole thing of, I was laughing, I was saying my dad branded all of us as Ds, right? We're all D-O-D-O at home. And he did his own branding of his kids to say, when you walk into a room, they must ask you, why are you, oh, my dad is Dominic. Oh, okay, you're all Ds. He branded us, right? But the depth of understanding what that name means and then saying, in terms of who I've become, now we've moved from 2020.
Yeah.
I've become a woman who's very in touch with who she is. I'm aware that my voice is unique and it stands out. I'm aware that I can say certain things to some people and they'll say yes to me in less than 5 minutes.
Case in point?
I'm aware of that, right? And now that I know those three things, now that I know what my name means, and also I've started doing coaching. A coach gives you guidance, but they're also a support structure, which is exactly what a column does. It supports the building. So I had to take those traits and say, how do I align that with the brand that I've become? Doric, the lady who knows how to use her voice. Doric, the lady who inspires other people to find their own voice from within. The lady who offers support through the work that she does. Whether it's philanthropy, coaching, speaking, training, all of that. I had to take all of those things and start aligning them. So you understand why it's so important you are literally building a structure. Identity, uniqueness, what distinguishes you from the crowd? What do you have? So when people give you feedback and they say, Dando, when I walk into a room, I feel so comfortable talking to you. There's something about your energy.
Yeah.
Don't just go, thanks, for years. Ask yourself, how do I take that energy and become intentional about my energy? Because trust me, there are deals that are signed because your energy was good enough compared to the other person who came for the tender.
And people that get jobs because of that as well.
Jobs. You walked into a room, all of you went to Wits University or University of Cape Town. We can name the university, UJ, you name it. All of you can speak English, rah, 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 rah. You all sound the same. So how am I going to choose you over the next person because you speak good English, you all went to top-notch universities? What is the one thing that's going to stand out? So you see why I said we can't use papers, guys. We can't be using our CVs to walk into rooms and expect our CVs to speak for us. There's something bigger that you already have that's on the inside of you that must speak and find expression. And the more you know it, trust me, you are going to serve the world better.
My chair is on fire right now. You're speaking to me. I'm saying amen. If I want to get started and I'm at a place where, two places. One, even if I have an idea of who I think I am, I don't see how it will help me make money. early on in my stage. Yeah, I've heard you, you touched me, but I feel if I focus on purpose and these things of just showing up in the way that I believe I'm talented or I've got gifts, I don't see how I'll make money. And so I end up quitting everything that I believe I am, everything that I'm good at, to go find a job because it's the only thing that seems to pay the bills.
Yeah. So a lot of us worry about bread and butter, right? But the time will come where even at work, you feel like your stomach is burning and you can't sit still. There's just something that is asking for more from you. And when that time comes, you must say yes. So there are people who are in a limbo because you're trying to survive, but at the same time, there is something that you know you have. So that exposure that I got, right? And one thing that you can never take away from me is I'm always selling, even though I don't like sales when it comes to work. But I am literally always selling what I do, who I am, in conversations without even realizing it. You know why I do that? You never know who's sitting right next to you, because that person might be the next stepping stone to where you're supposed to be. I always say relationships are a currency for me. Half of the work that I've received, I've done in business was because of relationships. You build relationships first because someone did what? Connected with you.
Yeah.
So because I'm intentional of my energy when I walk into a room, so when I leave home, this is my prayer when I'm going to an event.
Okay.
Father, I thank you for this opportunity. I pray that when I walk into the room, that it is not just about me shining, but it is about how I get to fill someone's cup and that someone may fill my cup.
Whoa.
Let every conversation I have lead me to your place of purpose for my life. So since I decided to say that prayer after 2020, I've never gone to an event where I come back home and I say, hey, that event was just boring. Even the people sitting at the table, I don't even know what they were talking about. Trust me, even if it's one person, something always happens because I'm intentional about it. And there is something spiritual about who you're also supposed to become. So I wanted to mention that also, that when we talk about identity and branding, people think, marketing level. You're like a company, you're like a business, it's deeper. So when we talk about depth, what actually makes up a human being? You have your soul, your spirit, your mind, and your body. So you can feed your body, you can go to the gym and come up with goals. And a lot of us tend to exclude the spiritual side of things because we're afraid to acknowledge that there is something that is at work in me that is bigger than what you're seeing on the outside. So when you talk about your brand, if you believe in God, don't be afraid to do it. It's a part of who you are. So I don't hide those things when I speak about how I came up with my brand. It's not a concept I dreamt about. Even if it was a dream, it was instilled by God. It comes from a higher power. So when you get to a place of not being afraid to acknowledge that, you must know that you're now authentic. You're not trying to fit into the shoes of anybody else. So you'll find speakers like Vusi Tembegwayo talking about God openly. So he's talking about business, but he's able to say, God this, right? Because we live in a world where people will make you feel bad and say, no, but you can't say that.
You can't say that.
No, but you can't say this. Which means you are asking me to stifle who I am. And so you were laughing at my height, right?
Yeah.
So doing that to me is like forcing me to sit, keep doing this.
So that you fit
bit
in.
by bit, I must keep fitting in. And by the time I'm done, you're not able to hear my voice. Why? Because I've been shrinking myself to a point where I am no longer audible. So I want you to have that visual mentality of every time someone asks me to become something I'm not, you are taking the microphone away from me. And you are asking me to keep going lower and lower to a point where people will not be able to hear my voice.
And that's happening to many people, eh?
A lot. I mean, we speak about how, you'll be shocked. I was a shy child. I never spoke a word when I was younger.
Okay.
So what people see now, it's refinement and processes that I've had to go through growing up. But a lot of us go through family barriers, right, to our growth, because some family members would say, "Ah, you are papa, man, you know, you're too loud. Just, we don't like noise." But you don't know that the person is loud because they're going to be a superstar one day. So they're practicing who they're going to become. And we say that to people that have children also. When you have an outspoken child, find a balance. So my child she will tell me straight up that I don't like your tone. So people will be laughing. They'll be saying, the communication specialist has a specialist in her own home who deals with her directly. It's because I want my child to be able to articulate how she feels, whether it's good or bad. Because most of us grew up being told, "Why are you crying? Crying for what? Why are you crying?" Men are told, "Men don't cry. Keep quiet. Why are you speaking like that? Don't look me in the eye." And then guess what happens? You're now at university, you've graduated, and you're reading some stuff on how to do the interview well and pass an interview. In there says, be able to look the person interviewing you in the eyes. Eye contact. And then I'm thinking, but I grew up being told not to look people in the eyes. Now I have to shift and adapt, right? But it's the impact of where I grew up that is showing up mostly. So people who struggle with confidence, half the time, you'll find that they'll tell you that, "My dad used to say this to me, my mother used to say this to me. I mean, at home they used to make fun of me. They would call me rah, rah, rah." Right?
What?
Rah, rah, rah. Like, they'll be like, "You're English." Like the way you like speaking English. It's like, rah, 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 rah. When I'm on the phone, they'd go, "You sound like you're going rah, 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 rah." But I would have taken that and said, that's a bit offensive. I loved it. I'm like, oh yeah. I had a British tutor, so I loved reading British books, and that worked for me. And I did drama at university, so I could apply all of those things in there. But here's the thing. We can get affected by what's said by people to us, whether it's intentional or not intentional. And I'm saying this so that people forgive their parents also and relatives. Don't be like, "I was malume. And then someone calls their uncle. They go, "Malume, Doric said," I was watching this video, Doric said, "Gahle gahle wena winking. I'm where I am in life because of you." The one thing that people must always remember is that even for your brand, you see the brands, the work that the brands put out there, they sit in rooms and they strategize about how they're going to stand out in the marketplace. That's what you have to do. Right?
How are we going to stand out?
How are you going to stand out? So I spoke about exposure, right? So you're talking about someone who's saying, where do I start? In as much as you might not know who you are, there's a quote that I like to use even in my profiles, is that be fearless about the pursuit of the things that set your soul on fire.
Sure.
So number one, you must be bold. When you now take the decision to say, I want to put myself out there, fear can't be a part of the equation. Fear doesn't mean you don't acknowledge that you're scared. Trust me, a lot of us started platforms shaking. You do it shaking, you do it sweating, but you do it anyway. You do it anyway. That's the difference. There are those who shake, there are those who sweat, and they go back into the hole. There are those who do it sweating and shaking, but they do it anyway. So when you now say, I want to do this, get help. Align yourself with people in similar industries that you can talk to, that you can confide in about where you're going. Also be very careful. Don't confide in people who will say, this is a stupid dream.
It's not going to work.
They're friends that we know. They're friends that we know are so negative. So exposure, going to these events where you can meet new people, helps you build yourself up, because the more you talk to people, the more you realize. When you discover that Doric also spent 5 years to even move on her brand, when you listen to her speaking, she sounds like she's been doing this for 20 years. What's the trick? Then you have a conversation with Doric. Doric shows you that, hey, I was also scared. It gives you hope that I can do it too. Right?
What's the lesson in making a good first impression? For me, if I want to be like you, on the call, I talk to someone 2 minutes, convince them, take me seriously. Yeah.
So here's the thing about knowing your brand. So we're talking personal branding, right? Which refers to individuals. But if you're doing a phone call and I'm speaking about what I do. I've had to take the time to understand what I do in my business and be able to compress it in less than a minute. So I must look at something and say, I do so many things. But when Dando is calling me, he's calling me not to discuss women empowerment. Right?
True.
So I must know, why am I having this conversation with this person? What is the intention of the conversation? Why are we speaking? Why are we talking?
I'm seeing two mistakes there already.
Yeah.
For many
So
people.
we
Number
don't-
one, you don't understand what you're doing.
Number two, you don't know why you are even having a conversation with someone.
And number two, you don't know why
You know
you're
you need
talking to
money.
that
You know you
person.
want investors. But you are just like, but why must it be Dando that I'm talking to? That's why I said to you, I watched your videos.
Yeah.
I was doing my research on you.
Okay.
I was watching your hand gestures. I'm thinking, okay, let me see. You know, because in as much as we do speaking for a living, we also get nervous about being interviewed. I
Yeah.
need to check if you're going to throw me under the bus and just throw in a curveball. And I'll be like, bro, we didn't talk about that. What's happening now, right? But it's one of those things of knowing who you're going to be interacting with, because I read energy by looking at your videos. I've already seen that, okay, this is the aura he brings into a conversation. Guess what I do after that? I get to align myself mentally. I prepare myself. So a lot of people you don't know. Number two, you don't know your why. Why are you talking to this person? What does this person have that is going to be relevant for your business? So who, right? Who are you? What do you do? How do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do?
Who are you?
Yeah, so we call
What
it a
do you
format
do?
model, even in training and communications. The who, what
What do you do? How do you
how
do
do you do
what
it? Why do you do what you do? Right? So those four things in any conversation, if you say to yourself, before I introduce myself, by the time I'm done with my introduction, someone must know who I am, right? Two,
What do you do?
what do I do? How do I do what I do? Why do I do what I do? So you introduced me as a communications expert, right? Hi, my name is Doric. I'm a passionate lady who's enthusiastic about helping people unearth the diamond within. Right. What do? I train, I coach, I'm a radio presenter. In fact, overall, I use my voice to inspire others to discover their own voices.
Your intro makes sense. You say those things.
Did I not say them? But I've been practicing. It's because I sat down and I said, who am I? What is it about me? What is it about my brand? What do I do? How do I do it? Right? So I use my voice. Remember, I've summarized my own gift and talent, because people don't have time to listen to stories, by the way, when we introduce ourselves. Keep that in mind, people. So in 30 seconds, I must be able to tell you that. How do I use my voice? I'm a master of ceremonies. I'm a speaker. I'm a moderator. I'm a facilitator. I'm a podcast host. Why do I do what I do? Because I discovered my gem and I want to help others find their own diamonds, because I know that's my purpose in life. I'm done. It was not 5 minutes. It was not 10 minutes. I didn't give you a description of my CV, how I went to Wits University and all that stuff. It's at that moment you must ask yourself, what do I need to say to this person right now in this context? Like I said, what I say to you might not apply to somebody else, because the conversation might not be relevant. You might be an investor and this person might be a potential partner for something else.
Someone else could be a potential customer. So what you
Have
say
those
will
categories.
change.
So that's why your why. Before you open your mouth, ask yourself, why am I even speaking? The why for me is always at the top.
It's powerful. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
If someone is inspired to start building their personal brand, but they say, is social media the way, an important part of that process?
Yeah.
Because I'm shy and I don't want to be on camera.
Yeah. So why do you think you need to be on social media?
Okay.
Why do you think you need to be on social media? So your why comes in. right? So a lot of us think, some people on TikTok, I'm not on TikTok, right? And a lot of people would say, but you should be on TikTok. So the whole point of being intentional is that you must ask yourself, is this where I'm going to find the people that I'm meant to serve?
Oh.
So if I'm a coach and I realize that being on Facebook serves my business well, I can serve people via Facebook. So when I started, I used a Facebook page to reach out to women. The day I did a face-to-face event, I had 150 women that I had never met before.
Nice.
First event I did had 150 women. And by the way, I did that without a budget.
Even.
So outside of moving and acting and being in motion, your faith in your brand is going to attract the right things that will elevate you to where you need to be. Because sometimes people say, I don't have money. So the theme of the conference, strangely enough, was start where you are, use what you can, do what you can.
Start where you are.
Use what you have, do what you can. So you start where you are, use what you have. So what do I have? My voice. So I did videos and I used my voice to bring women in so they could come to the conference. And I did everything to the best of my ability. So when you think about your brand, you must ask yourself, have I done the best? The best means be intentional, put in an effort, read books, read about your craft. I constantly am reading books on communication because I never believe that I've arrived. I'm a perpetual learner. So when we were talking about radio, I'd never been a radio presenter. But people would say, you sound like you've been doing radio for so many years. It's because when I'm given something, I don't play. Like, I don't want to compete with myself. I fear myself the most, more than fearing people. Like, if I woke up and I was told I have a clone, Ntando.
You're scared.
I'm scared. Because when I step into a place that is unfamiliar versus running, I want to take everything in with so much depth. And I'm like, when I'm done, people must not be able to say, oh, she's new. Which is what we do when we get jobs. You want to be someone on probation for 12 years. You are still learning. Why? Why haven't you grown beyond the probation? So it's a mindset thing. Mindset Profits podcast.
You are coming back. You are coming back.
It's a mindset. It's a mindset.
Wow, this has been amazing. I thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing.
It was a pleasure.
I want to ask you to do me one favor. On this camera, to someone who is discouraged, they tried to go on social media, they tried to do one or two things to build their brand in the best way they thought they could, and it didn't work out.
Okay. So the fact that you tried is a form of an action, and that is good. So first you must acknowledge the fact that you did something. And winning is something that you do without the praise of the public, of people around you. You must be able to say, I'm winning because I am in motion. And one day, anything you do repetitively so is going to reap the results that you want. So keep going. You try other platforms that might work for you. Find people in your space that you can engage with, that can encourage you, and be willing to accept feedback. Anyone who cannot take in feedback will not thrive in life, because everything you build is also built based on what has been said, what you know, combined together, you can then shine. So don't ever lose hope. Keep pushing, because the diamond is still on the inside of you. Thank you.
This is standing ovation, 10 claps, all the work.
Thank you so much, Ndando.
I know this has blessed you. I said she will be back. So think of this as part 1.
Then there's part 2.
There's going to be a part 2. But thank you. Remember to like, share the episode with someone in your life that you know will need to hear this. I know you will know someone in your life. Thank you for all you've been doing in supporting the podcast. We are growing and growing really fast, and it's all because of you. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you on the next episode. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow.